Hello you guys, welcome back to the desk corner. In today's video, I actually just wanted to sit down and maybe look at some artwork that I've done previously that I actually either did not like the outcome of it, so I didn't completely finish it, but I almost finished it, or I just felt like it could use a little more, something extra. So I have a couple of artworks here today to work on. I'm sure if I really went through everything I could find more, but I figured that for one video, 3 artworks is probably enough to try and work on. So the first one here is this summer sailboats painting that I started working on this summer, but right at the start, and I do have the footage so I might play it in this video, just sped up. Right at the start, I was feeling very rusty with watercolor, and also I felt like I didn't have a good plan for what I was going to do with this one. So this one is going to probably take the longest to fix up. Next, I pulled out this piece from who knows when. I don't think I've signed or dated it, and it might have been from a previous video, and I might have to go back and check, but honestly, I don't really remember when I painted these pumpkins. I also don't really know what paper this is that they're painted on. I just feel like I could do a little extra for them. I'm not really sure what yet. And then finally, I have this acrylic painting, which is just a miniature acrylic pumpkin, and it's just not good. There's a lot of issues with this one, so I'm probably going to fix it up with my POSCAs. I don't really feel like it needs a whole acrylic paint over again. I think I can just use my POSCAs and fix it up, hopefully. With that being said, we have a lot of work to do with these, so let's go ahead and get started. Here are my POSCAs, which I will be using to fix up this painting. Again, I don't think it is worthwhile to take all the paints out for this tiny painting when it really just needs some touching up. It's a little rough around the edges. It could be in better shape. That's what I will say about it. I don't really like this swatch chart that I made. I thought it was cute in the moment when I was making this, when I first bought the POSCAs, but now I'm thinking I just want a regular swatch chart. And so I have another piece of scrap paper. I like to collect these because I don't like to waste any of my expensive papers. And I think if I trim it down just a little bit, it will fit in here as a swatch sheet. I mean, I'll probably just trim it to this exact size. That makes it easy for me, and just re-swatch these because this is going to annoy me. So there's my swatch chart. You can see a couple of these colors were starting to maybe run dry a bit, either because they shifted in the bag or maybe the lid was not on tight enough for that blue color. I'm not really sure what happened, but I was able to revive it, and hopefully I felt like I had put all the lids back on tightly this time, and hopefully that does not happen again. Now that that's all swatched out and very aesthetically pleasing, let's go ahead and get started fixing up my sad pumpkin. I started off by filling in some of the shadowed areas with my red POSCA, and then I decided to exaggerate some of the highlights and really create a nice blend of color. I thought that this piece was a little bit boring and maybe too zoomed in from the view that we're looking at the pumpkin, so I thought making it a bit more cartoon-like and whimsical and just slightly more animated would make the most sense. So I went ahead and exaggerated the highlights and the shadows a bit. Tried to blend the colors together as best as I could, but these POSCAs hadn't been used too much in the past 2 years, so sometimes I had to prime them for a while, or they would be a bit watery. Maybe they got stored at a weird angle at some point. The part I struggled with most was the stem. Now I'm looking and I realized that I was filming this at night, and so I elongated the stem of the pumpkin and didn't like it. So the next morning I was annoyed and I had to go over it multiple times, not shown on camera, to fix that with the oranges and reds and yellows. But I did end up fixing it, and I think it looks fine in the end here. I just left the stem a little bit elongated, and so I think it looks kind of cute, and I'm definitely going to be using that as fall decor now that that's fixed. So now I'm moving on to my other piece, which is also pumpkins, but this time with watercolor. Now with this piece, I had it in my portfolio from who knows when, but it just wasn't really finished, and I'm not really sure why I didn't finish it or add anything to it, but that's just the state of where it was. So what I did was I sketched in some background vines and leaves and just a little bit of foliage to try and fill out the picture a little bit more, and I'm using my kneaded eraser to lighten those pencil marks. And then I'm just going in with my watercolor, one of my smaller watercolor brushes, and adding in some of that foliage. And honestly, I'm not completely in love with it because it doesn't look entirely natural, but it does look kind of autumn and not really spooky, but maybe just a little bit spooky. So I was kind of thinking that I could make it a little more whimsical, just like I did with the acrylic painting. Now, with this one, I was having a lot of fun just painting in leaves, practicing my watercolor skills a little bit more. I started to darken some of these sticks and vines and leaves, and I was wondering if maybe I did a little too much of that because the end result of this maybe has a background that looks a little bit too dark. So let me know what you guys think, but I think that maybe I darkened up the background just a little too much. Now you'll see in a moment here that I'm going to darken up the pumpkins as well, just to kind of make them pop out a little bit more. If I wanted to, I could have just left everything how it was with a lighter background and lighter foreground with the pumpkins, but I do like to add a lot of contrast to my work, so I decided to darken up a lot of those areas, and I'm not really sure if it made the picture look too much better. You guys will have to let me know what you think. I think I was having some trouble with the stems of the pumpkin. I just wanted to make them look more natural, like they were actually attached to the pumpkins and not just kind of floating on top of them. And in my original piece, I didn't add a lot of details to those either. You can see that I'm adding some contrast just to make sure the attention or the focus is on those pumpkins in the middle. And overall, I think it's just a really fun piece. It's colorful. It is very autumn, of course, which turned out to be the theme of this video unintentionally. And I'm just adding in some extra details to this painting, and sometimes I feel like adding details with watercolor can be difficult. Now here's where I don't know if I messed up a little bit, but I started to add more to the bottom of the shadow area where the pumpkins were casting a shadow. You'll see that in a moment, and I'm wondering if I should have just left that part how it was. You can see me kind of darkening up some areas and adding some fall colors to the leaves just to, I guess, make it a little more interesting. But again, I think I'm taking maybe too much attention away from the pumpkins, which are supposed to be the center of the piece. I did have a lot of fun with this background regardless though, and I think it really helped to fill out the page, so I didn't have to trim this one down to a much smaller size, which I sometimes do for my artwork, but sometimes it's just fun to fill in the page. And I do think it would have looked better if I just created a background layer so that the background was not white, but that's okay. And you'll see me adding some stuff to the bottom too, and some highlights with my white gel pen, which I think look pretty decent, but again, sometimes I just use the white gel pen to save my artwork, or try to at least. In this one, I just wanted to make those highlights a little more bold because I felt like I had lost them as I was working, and I'm not sure I really had too many highlights to begin with here. And that gel pen, it is so hard to use that on a textured piece of paper, so it just took me absolutely forever because of the texture of the paper. But after being a little persistent, those white highlighted areas started to pop. And now we're going to move on to the final piece that I fixed in today's video, and for this one I actually had the footage for the entire piece because I started this earlier in the summer, and it's a very summer style piece. It's 2 sailboats on a lake, and I was so excited for this one, but I didn't really plan it out well enough, and so what happened was I thought of all these techniques I wanted to do, and you can see that as I started the piece, things were going pretty well. I wanted to create this sort of pattern in the sails without the colors bleeding into each other, hence why I used the washi tape and really just waited for each layer to dry, so this took me quite a while. I wasn't so happy with the sky though, because that pink color was not really the color I was going for. So I tried to change it, but kind of messed it up a little in the process, and so then later you'll see I tried to blotch out a lot of that color. I added some foliage or trees in the background on top of the sand, which is a little hard to see. Blotched out some of the sky, which doesn't look so good at this stage of the piece, and then for the part I was most excited for, I added in a bunch of fun colors for the water surrounding the sailboats. My vision for this piece was really to have this kind of free-flowing look around the sailboats, but a very geometric, patterned look for the sailboats themselves to make them sort of the center of the piece. But I was excited to add all those colors and the reflection of the water and just kind of do my own thing with the water. But by the time I got to this stage in the piece, I was tired and just kind of gave up on it for a little while. So it took me a while to come back to it, maybe a couple weeks or so. First thing I did when I came back to it is started working on the actual boats because I just left those blank when I first started the piece. And then I really wanted to have more fun with that water, create some more contrast and add some more colors. I was going for this sort of cloudy, stormy day on the lake. I blotched out more of those colors to give more of a cloudy effect in the sky, but I still wasn't entirely happy with it. I liked it better than it looked before, at least. I was having a lot of fun adding in all these colors into the lake and just sort of doing my own thing with the watercolor and my brushes. So this went on for a while, and I didn't mind it too much, even though there were other parts of the piece that I was still not entirely happy with. I did see that other parts of the piece needed a little more contrast and something extra, so I tried to do that. The foliage I thought was just a little flat, so I darkened it up a bit, made it look a little more interesting, and then worked on the actual boats again. This part I was just winging because I didn't really draw in or sketch in accurately how the boats were going to look, but I think it turned out okay. And then I just wanted to add more blue to that sky and just have it fade out at the bottom, and I think I was able to get that look all right. However, this piece still wasn't quite done, so I used my white POSCA marker to outline the sailboats. I thought this really brought it together and brought the sailboats back to the center of the piece, and make sure that they're the main focus, even though there's a lot of colors going on in this piece. I also felt like it was lacking highlights anyway, so it's always fun to go and add those in. So this was maybe the most fun part for me. You can see that I go ahead and do the same thing for the actual boat portion of these. So the sails, the boat, and then I thought, well, the water needs some highlights too, and so next I go in with the POSCA and just add a bunch of highlights to the water to make it really look like it's a stormy day out on the lake. This part was so fun for me to do. I love adding highlights to pieces like this. At first I thought I might be overdoing it though, so I figured maybe I'll lighten up the highlights as we get further back into the lake to make sure it looks a little more realistic, and you'll see me do that momentarily. And then I was pretty happy with how that water turned out. It really looked like a windy day. I didn't like that pink color in the sky, so I tried to add a bit of orange, blotched that out to see if I could maybe change the color without darkening the sky too much, and I think it worked. It's still not perfect, but it definitely helped some. I'm going to show you guys a before and after in a moment. There's the before picture and the after. And then, of course, for my little acrylic pumpkin, before and after. And then finally, for my fall pumpkins in watercolor, before and after. Let me know what you guys think. Which piece was your favorite? Did you like what I ended up doing with them? And thanks so much for watching as always. I'll see you guys in the next one.